Welcome to the journey. I hope you're enjoying your reading up to this point. Our next book that we're going to be encountering is the book of Romans. And it's probably one of my most favorite books in the New Testament because of all the things that are contained within it. The author of this book was the Apostle Paul, and Paul was writing around 57 AD. He was writing from a place called Corinth, and this was actually on his third missionary journey. Now, he had never been to Rome before, so he's sort of writing to prepare the way for him to go visit Rome. And in writing this book, he covers some key doctrinal issues or theologies about how we have a relationship with God, what sin is all about. It's just a plethora of different theological concepts. It's probably one of the most theological books in the New Testament. And when we talk about theology, theology is just simply the study of God and how He interacts with us in a practical way. So, as we dive into the book, in the first part, chapters 1 through 3, we really see Paul painting the picture of how Jesus, in the power of the gospel, is for everybody. Because everybody has this common problem. That problem is sin. As a matter of fact, in Romans 3:23, he says, "For all have sinned and fallen short of God's glory." So that includes everybody that has ever been created, me, you, and everybody else. And then as we progress on in the next chapters, the latter part of chapter 3 on in through chapter 6, we see God's answer that through Jesus Christ, God demonstrated His love for us while we were still sinners, and that He died for us. And so those chapters paint out how that applies to both Jews and Gentiles and every person. And so in chapter 6 through 8, though, we see God's and how He really works in our lives, and how He really wants to exchange who we are, so we're buried with Him through this death that Christ had on the cross and through His suffering. And we're raised to walk in a different life. And in chapter 7, it talks about that struggle with that life, and it's a very practical book on how we as Christians wrestle with life change and trusting God to change us. But then in chapter 8, he sort of relieves it. He says, there's no condemnation for those that are in Christ Jesus, who walk according to the Spirit, but not according to the flesh. And then as we move on into the chapter 9s and on, we begin to see how God's going to redeem Israel and work through His chosen people that Christ came to save as well. And then in chapter 12 and on, we see practical application of how this fleshes out in our lives and how we begin to live out this Christian life with the government and using our spiritual gifts that God's given us, and how He really wants us to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. This is a phenomenal book that's life-changing. And so as Paul wrote it, he sent it ahead with this lady named Phoebe, and she took it to the Romans to prepare the way so he could visit them. As you read this book, I hope God just really allows His truth to resonate in your heart about who He is and the power of the gospel to change our lives and the power of Christ to continue to transform us.